the first thing that stood out to me, the first of the four, is that Virginia Giuffre was not called to testify against Ghislaine Maxwell. So Virginia Giuffre, she is the one who accused Prince Andrew of sexual assault, and she sued Prince Andrew, and that trial, according to the judge, will happen. Prince Andrew was supposedly hiding out and avoiding being served papers because Virginia Giuffre sued Prince Andrew, but Virginia Giuffre accused Prince Andrew of sexual assault. She was flown around the world by Epstein and Maxwell when she was 17 and 18 years old. And she says she had sex with billionaires, royals, and heads of state. She claimed that Epstein forced her. So Virginia claimed that Epstein forced her to have sex with Prince Andrew 3 separate times. Tons of physical evidence. I don't want to say that because it's not. It's not physical evidence, but there's tons of corroboration to support what Virginia is claiming from other girls who were being sexually abused by Epstein. And there's documents, there's pictures of her with Prince Andrew. There's her at parties, like looking like she's fucking 13 years old, with Ghislaine Maxwell and Naomi Campbell. And there are a lot of things that seem to support what Virginia Giuffre is saying about Epstein and therefore Ghislaine Maxwell. She would have provided great testimony. As I pick my nose. She would have provided solid testimony against Ghislaine Maxwell because Ghislaine Maxwell, she is being charged with sex trafficking minors. She is being painted by the prosecution as this person who is organizing Epstein's life, managing everything behind the scenes, including his massages and sex with minors. And she was eventually found guilty of sex trafficking minors. But it seems like Virginia would have been the nail in the coffin, that she could have got on the stand and said, this is what Ghislaine was doing, because Ghislaine was the one on trial. Even though Epstein is dead, she still could have put the nail in the coffin for Ghislaine. And she could have provided stories that described her assaults in detail and rapes in detail. Her interactions with other girls that were under the influence of Ghislaine and Epstein, and then also pictures of her with the royal family and in places that she should not be, and testimony of how, like, it all seemed to be pointing towards Virginia Giuffre being a very reliable witness. And she was not called to testify by the prosecution. So Giuffre's lawyer, in response to this, said that, quote, "The government is not telling us what they are doing. They are only bringing charges against women who were under the age of consent at the time." So there's some speculation that maybe Virginia Giuffre knows too much, and the government is somehow being manipulated not to call her to the stand. The prosecution had some reason not to call her to the stand because she knows too much. I don't really think that. I think it can also be difficult to get a conviction, apparently. I was reading that it's difficult to get a conviction with victims that are closer to the age of consent, like Giuffre. She was, I believe, she was 17 and 18 at the time, which is still underage in most places, when she was having sex with Epstein and other people. But it can be tougher to bring charges against someone when they're closer to the age of consent. And in some places, the age of consent is 16. So if she was traveling a lot, she was on private jets, she was being flown around, it could have been more difficult to pin her down. I think that may have been a more plausible reason to why she wasn't called to the stand, because there might have been some loophole where Epstein was doing things to her in a manner where she wasn't technically a minor. I don't know. But let's get into GIUFFRE's relationship with Prince Andrew, because this is a big one. And like I said, Prince Andrew is currently being sued by GIUFFRE. It was just announced last week that the trial will be going forward, GIUFFRE suing Prince Andrew. And so there's a quote from witness Joanna Sjoberg, Sjoberg, Joanna Joberg or Sjoberg. And she was another girl that was lured in by Epstein. She was an underage girl. And Joanna says, Andrew, so Prince Andrew and Virginia GIUFFRE, sat on the couch and they pet the puppet. So the puppet on the couch.